Hey there. Welcome to Toy Talk with Mike and Casey, episode 1. Not really. This is just going to be Mike's collection episode, I think 277. But Casey is joining me here today. I recently did a bit of a makeover in my toy room here. So I've now got 2 chairs so that when my co-host Chad does come around, we actually have kind of an official set. And anyways, I find it really hard to come down here and shoot videos without Casey being in the room because she's always barking and interrupting everything if she's not down here. So I kind of thought maybe if I brought her down here, let her sit in Chad's chair for the duration of the episode, I can actually get through this without being interrupted with barking. Although I'm really hoping she's not going to lick my new chairs. She has a tendency to do that. So you just sit down and get cozy. You can give your opinion on any of these figures if you have one. But for today's episode, the part of my collection that I'm going to be talking about is my new Marvel Legends. And these are Marvel Legends that I've acquired over the past, 2 months or so. And there's quite a lot of them. So, yeah, it's just, the year kind of started kind of slow with me for Marvel Legends. I think like the first quarter I only had like 3 or 4 figures. And now all of a sudden this past quarter, I've already done one video on Marvel Legends. And now here I am back with another one. So, this is a couple of different waves kind of mixed together. I don't know if I really got any complete waves here, but anyway, let's just dive in because, like I said, I've got a lot to talk about. So the first one I'm going to mention, I guess, is this is Corsair. So this here is kind of from the X-Men comic books. This guy is actually Cyclops and Havoc's father. So he is a member of the team, the Starjammers. He's like a space pirate. I haven't read X-Men comic books for like 30 years. And even back when I didn't read a lot of the stuff with the Starjammers. I think they were pretty prominent maybe in the 70s and stuff. So I don't know a lot about Corsair. He's an okay looking character. He looks kind of too young to be Cyclops' father, but I don't know, maybe they've explained that away by him traveling in space. He doesn't age at the same rate or something. I don't know. But he looks just as I described him, a space pirate. He's got the little kind of pirate gun. He's got a little pirate saber. He's got the little belt that's like a sash. So yeah, he's all right. The figure's nice. It's well proportioned and everything. Like it's I'm not sure what base body they used. Generally, as over the years, Marvel Legends has kind of changed up the general body type, and once they find a good one, they just use it over and over and over again because so many of their characters are just, muscle-bound guys in tights, so they can use them repeatedly. So yeah, I'm not sure who originally had this body, but it works well for him. It's a good mid-sized guy. He's not like a big beefy guy like the Hulk or a little wiry guy like Spider-Man. It's a really good base body. He's got kind of the butterfly joints on his arms, so his arms can kind of come in and everything like that. Other than that, I'm not going to talk about articulation a whole lot in this video because Marvel Legends have been around long enough. I'm sure you know how they're articulated. Double jointed knees, double jointed elbows, all that jazz. So yeah, Corsair is pretty cool. This wave has been around for a while, and it was an X-Men centric wave. I wasn't really planning on buying any of the figures from this wave. A while back, I did buy the character of Fang, who's kind of like a werewolf member of the Starjammers team, and or is he part of the Imperial Guard? Either way, some space werewolf guy. So I bought that, and with that, I got a Build-A-Figure piece for the Build-A-Figure character is Chode, I think is how you pronounce that. And he is a member of the Starjammers. He's kind of a big lizardy guy. So I got Chode's arm, and then I bought another figure, and I got his head. And anyway, I have a unfinished Build-A-Figure of Abomination. And the Chode body uses a lot of the same pieces as Abomination. So, yeah, I think the Corsair came with the head, I believe, or maybe the arm, whatever. So between Fang and Corsair, I now had 2 pieces of Chode. And it just so happened I had 3 pieces of Abomination. And so even though they don't match, like Chode's obviously a much brighter green, the pieces do snap together because the Chode pieces are just kind of slightly retooled from the Abomination figure from a few years ago. And so I had them in my collection like this. And I thought, well, even though I didn't want another figure from that wave, I kind of felt compelled to buy the figure who came with the right leg, which would have been Emma Frost. The problem is I already have 2 Emma Frosts in my collection that I prefer over the one that's available in this wave. So I was really going to be throwing my like $40 away to buy her. But anyway, I went to one of the local comic book shops, Giant Robot Comics. Sorry, let me just get her cozy here. I don't want her scratching my new chair up, so I'm going to tuck her into the blanket. There we go. So yeah, I really didn't want to buy the Emma Frost. So I went to Giant Robot Comic Books, and they have a whole rack of loose Build-A-Figure pieces that people have traded in. So they had a Chode leg, and unfortunately, I didn't realize it because it's hard to tell which is even the right or left foot because he just has 2 big toes. It's not super obvious. Anyway, it's the wrong foot. So I have 2 left feet for this guy. And I was kind of hoping I could snap this in place, but the pegs are different sizes. So even though I can stand him on my shelf, and he can kind of rest there, and he looks like a complete figure, the leg just falls off. There's no locking mechanism there. So I'm still thinking I'm either going to have to go out and buy that Emma Frost figure at some point, or I might have to bite the bullet and try and find the figure that came with the right leg of Abomination, which might have been an Iron Man or somebody like that. I don't know. He's several years old, so finding Emma would be easier. But no matter. I don't really mind that he doesn't really match up so good. He's not like a favorite character of mine, and regardless, I think it works. You could just kind of say he's got like vitiligo or some skin condition. And anyway, there you go. So that's Chode. He's pretty cool. What else? I've got a couple of Avengers characters. So one of the most recent waves of Marvel Legends has been the Avengers, I think they're calling it 60th anniversary collection. I don't know. But they come in these new white boxes. And so I got... This guy is Captain America, but this is Bucky Barnes as Captain America. So this is from the kind of famous Ed Brubaker story from several years back when they brought Bucky Barnes back from the dead after being dead for decades. And he came back as the Winter Soldier, initially kind of an evil character who had been brainwashed, but he was Cap's old friend. Cap, saved him from the brainwashing, but then Captain America died, Steve Rogers. And so then Bucky Barnes took on the mantle of Captain America. And he got a new costume when that happened. It was relatively short-lived because Steve Rogers came back from the dead, became Captain America again. But, this was a cool period of time. I don't necessarily love this costume. I think it's a little too plain. It's got kind of the shape of it is like a shield shape from the original Captain America. Before he had the circular shield, he just had kind of this... I don't know how else to describe it other than shield-shaped shield. And so that's what this kind of costume is reminiscent of. He's got the classic Captain America shield on his chest, but then otherwise it's just like a plain black bodysuit. And I didn't really like that. I don't think it looks great in toy form, and I didn't think it looked great in the comic books. But, I might have been compelled to pass on this since it was a short-lived look. I already have Bucky Barnes as the Winter Soldier, and I already have Steve Rogers as Captain America, so maybe I could have passed on this. The thing is, it was just such a good storyline. They adapted it into the Winter Soldier movie, which was, one of the best Marvel movies. So yeah, because I love that storyline so much, I felt compelled to get this Bucky Cap. He comes with a gun, which is, kind of weird for Captain America. You don't really think of Captain America having a gun. But really, Cap and Bucky are soldiers, so it's really not that odd. But he comes with a gun and a knife, and they can both be holstered and sheathed on his belt. And it's a really nice looking figure. Again, well proportioned, everything like that. It's a really good build. So yeah, really pleased with this guy. Then also from the Avengers Anniversary line, I've got this, I think they call it Mark 1 armor, or first appearance Iron Man, whatever you want to call it. But this is Iron Man in his big, clunky, silver armor that he built in the cave when he was first held captive. And, they've made a toy of this armor many times in the past, and it was, big and clunky. I'm impressed that they were able to make this one still look big and clunky, and yet it's as well articulated as most other Marvel Legends figures. Like, it's still got double jointed knees and elbows. You know, he's got swivels there. He's not like a big brick like you would kind of expect him to be. And yeah, he looks great. He's got some kind of scuffs on the armor, which, just break it up from being just a plain silver body. So I like the kind of battle damage. I like that, you peer in his mask. Now, I've got bad lighting here right now. I don't know if you can see the eyes. I think you can. You look into the eye holes of his helmet, and you can see the eyes that he's got there. I don't remember exactly what he came with for accessories. I'm sure he came with some extra hands, and he probably came with some repulsor blasts. I think he might have come with some little explosions to come out of his feet, as well as smoke trails, so you can kind of have him flying. A lot of the Iron Man figures come with the same type of stuff. So yeah, I've had this guy for a while now, so I don't remember what he came with. But anyway, really solid figure. I'm not sure if I'm going to get too many more of these Anniversary Avengers figures, just because I have most of the characters already. But this one was really nice, and I wanted to pick him up. Next up, I have got... so this wave here, it recently came out. It's for the Captain Marvel movie that's coming out, The Marvels. So half of the wave was characters from the movie. So Carol Danvers and Kamala Khan and what's her face. So the three women from the movie, and then you also had some comic book characters in the wave too that are either pretty directly tied to Captain Marvel or loosely tied to Captain Marvel. Maybe they're just kind of cosmic. So I wanted some of these figures, but none of them were like must-haves for me. I like getting any character that I don't already have in my collection. I'm just a bit of a Marvel junkie, so anytime they make any little side character that I don't already have, I sometimes want to grab them. But the cost of these figures nowadays, they are like $40 here in Canada, and it's just really expensive. And so I can't justify dropping $40 on a non-interesting character. Not something that I kind of like. I need to want that character. And sometimes if I want to build a figure, that helps me justify buying a figure I might not have wanted so much because I need the piece that he comes with. But the build a figure for this wave was the, I forget what they call him. It's the Hulk, but the totally awesome Hulk, I think is what they call him. And he is the young teen Hulk, which I have no real interest in. So that alone wasn't enough to compel me to buy any of these figures. So I thought I was maybe going to pass on the entire wave. However, I went to my Walmart a little while ago now, a month or so ago, and they had a bunch of Marvel figures they had just restocked. So this was the first time I'd seen these figures. They were brand new, and they didn't have a price on the peg, but they had some Marvel Legends that were priced at like $40, and then they had one or two other Marvel Legends from a couple of waves ago that were discounted to like $25 or something. So, and they were beside the new wave of Miss Marvel figures. So I thought, I'm going to bring these up to the scanner and just check. Maybe if these things are marked at $25 rather than $40, maybe I'll actually pick up one or two of the figures that I want. Anyway, I took them over to the scanner, and the brand new wave of Captain Marvel Legends were coming up at $14.99 when they should have clearly been $40. And, there was a little part of the Good Samaritan me that felt like I should go tell them they've got these priced wrong. But it's not like it was a whole wall of figures. It was literally, they had one box of like one set of this assortment. So a total of 7 or 8 figures. And God knows Hasbro's got enough money out of me these many, many years. So I thought, I'm going to take the win on this, and I'm going to buy the figures that I want for $14. So this was a huge score. So I got Karnak. So again, I don't think he's really tied to Captain Marvel at all. Not to say he hasn't appeared in her comic books, but I don't read them on the regular, so I don't know. But he is a member of the Inhumans, and that is a group that has been largely underserved in Marvel Legends. We got Black Bolt a while ago, and then we got a Walgreens exclusive Medusa, but that wasn't a very good Medusa. But as far as the other guys go, like Triton and Gorgon and stuff, we haven't got any of those guys. Karnak's even had his own title, like his own comic book before, and we didn't get a figure of him. So I'm not surprised that he's the first one they went with. He's not a particularly interesting character, and it's not a particularly great figure. Like, it's fine, but where I said that Corsair and Bucky Cap were really well proportioned and it really worked for the characters they are, I can understand why they went with a more wiry Spider-Man type body for Karnak because he's a martial artist, but it's not as good a proportion even for like a lean martial artist guy. It just looks a little off. And I'm sure it's a body they've used for Spider-Man and for other characters before. I think it might be the Pizza Spidey body. I don't know. It's not a bad figure at all, but I never would have paid $40 for it. But for $14.99, great deal. So I'm happy to get Karnak. Another one I got was this guy, who I believe is presently in this version, in this incarnation, is called Marvel Boy. Now this guy has had a few different names over the years. They keep trying new ways to present this guy. This is Captain Marvel's, like the male, the original Captain Marvel, who was a guy who died. This is like his son, I believe. I might be getting two characters mixed up because he has his son Legacy, who has also changed his identity and his look. And then there's this guy, Marvel Boy, who I believe he's a Kree descendant, Kree being one of the alien races that's always battling with the Skrulls in the Marvel Universe. But anyway, this guy was a member of the Young Avengers for a while. He's just kind of like a teen hero. He was a member of the Dark Avengers. And I'll be honest, I collected the whole Dark Avengers series, and I don't remember this guy. Like, I do remember he was in it, but I didn't at the time. I bought this guy, and when I posted a picture of this figure on my Instagram, and I said, I don't know if I've really read any comics with this guy, but it's a cool looking figure. And then somebody commented like, oh, you should have read the Dark Avengers. It was good. And I was like, I did read the Dark Avengers. This guy didn't make an impression on me. I don't really remember. He's been in something more recently that I read. I didn't read the Young Avengers. He was in the Guardians. He was in one of the more recent incarnations of the Guardians of the Galaxy, which I did read. But again, he was not one of the more interesting characters in there. He seems like a character that Marvel wants to happen, but I don't know how successful they are at getting him, into the mainstream or anything. His costume is nothing to call home about. It's black with just kind of a white streak down the middle. He's got two little gold guns that look like hair dryers. I do like the face sculpt on him. I think he does look appropriately young. I like the way his hair is sculpted. It's a nice figure of a character that I didn't have in my collection, so I'm happy to get him. But I'm happy he was only $14. Next up, from the same wave. So I did buy one of the movie characters. Now, I'm much more of a comic book Marvel guy than the MCU guy. Like, don't get me wrong, I love the MCU movies. But when I buy the toys, I can't help but see the actors. Like, okay, if I get Star-Lord, I just see Chris Pratt or I see Chris Evans as Captain America. I would rather a Captain America that looks like he does in the comic books. So there's the odd exception to that rule. And with Captain Marvel or Photon, I forgot her name earlier, but it's Monica Rambeau. So yeah, this was a former Avenger back in the 80s who had taken on the mantle of Captain Marvel for a while. When Carol Danvers took that name back, she became Photon. She has also been a member of Next Wave. I'm not sure where she's been recently. I haven't seen her in a while. But I'll be honest, this was a character I never cared for. I just never liked the look of her back in the 80s when she was kind of a prominent member of the Avengers. I just had kind of zero interest in her. And they recently just put out a figure of her as part of that Avengers Anniversary series. It's a 2-pack with a really nice Doctor Doom figure. Now, I really want that Doctor Doom. And if he was single carded, I would have bought him by now. The fact that he's packaged with Photon kind of makes it harder for me to justify spending the money because I just don't like the look of that figure. Now, mind you, it's her classic 80s outfit. I'd rather her in that outfit than pretty much any other outfit she's worn throughout her years in the Marvel Universe. But I really liked the actress that portrayed her in the Scarlet Witch show, and now that character is carrying on into the Marvels. And I don't remember what this actress's name is, but like she's attractive, and this head sculpt really nails it. Like, it's a really good sculpt and digital print. Also, the costume is close enough, like it's black and white, and it's got the logo similar to the iconic comic costume, but it just looks better here. It doesn't have the pillowy arms and stuff that I never liked on the comic version. It's just a really nice version of this character, and for the first time ever, I find myself liking Photon. So that's why I went with the MCU version over the comic book version. But I might cave and get that comic book version eventually just because I want to get the Doctor Doom. Okay, next up, there was a new wave of Spider-Man retro figures. They were all really nice. So these guys come on the retro card, so it looks like the 90s Toy Biz figures. They've done a couple of waves of these guys. Anyway, from the current wave, there was, I think, 2 figures that I skipped on. One of them was a Miles Morales Spider-Man, because it was Miles's new outfit, which he has already moved on from. So it was one of those like really short-lived things. Like he wore it for, I don't know, 30 issues, maybe, probably not even that much, 20. And then he doesn't have it anymore. And I never liked the costume anyway. He had this weird turtleneck kind of pulled up over half of his mask. I don't know why, but with Miles, they keep trying to integrate kind of street fashion into his costume. I think it started with the Spider-Verse movies where he's wearing sneakers and a hoodie over top of his costume. And then they tried to do that in the comic book by giving him a zip-up hoodie and sneakers. It doesn't really work for me. I don't like it. So I skipped on that figure. The other one was Elektra in her Daredevil outfit, which I actually really like that look. But I already have a couple Elektras in my collection. And this too, even though it's a cool look, it is a short-lived look. I think she's already moved on from it. There's a new Daredevil series starting, and I'm pretty sure Elektra is no longer filling the role of Daredevil. So, in the grand scheme of things, I don't really need it in my collection. If it had a Build-A-Figure piece, I would have been happy to buy it, and I would have felt justified. But having to pay $40 on its own, I am trying to be a little bit more conservative with my money, so I didn't buy her. But I bought the other 4 figures. And I know I just said I was being conservative, but I bought myself another Spider-Man. I have probably more Spider-Mans in my collection than I have anybody else. I really don't need another Spider-Man. This is a unique Spider-Man costume, but barely. Like, I know you can't really see as I hold it up, but I am going to put split screen stuff in here. This is a costume that he wore recently in the comic books. Peter Parker was in a coma, and his clone, Ben Reilly, stepped in to the role of Spider-Man to kind of take care of things while Peter was unavailable. And this was the Spider-Man costume that Ben Reilly wore for that short period of time. It was a total of 19 issues, but Spider-Man comes out 3 times a month. So really, it was only a few months that Ben Reilly was filling the role of Spider-Man. He's been Spider-Man before. He already has his own unique Spider-Man outfit. I don't know why they felt the need to change it up again. But they did. They didn't change it significantly. But it looks really good. And I think the big selling point for this is the head on this figure. And it's not that different from other Spider-Man we've got. But they have been putting out a lot of really great Spider-Man figures in the last couple of years. I think the last couple of, like, my best of the year list, 2 years ago, I had a red and blue Spider-Man, which I never thought would have been on my best of list again, just because I have so many of them. But they just really nailed it. And I thought it just looked like John Romita artwork. It looked really good. They really captured a look of that character. And then they did the black and white Spider-Man. Again, they've done it a million times. But this one was kind of based on the Kraven's Last Hunt look. And it looked even better than the one that came in the Kraven's Last Hunt 2-pack. This was a really good build, really good paint job. It looked like Mike Zeck artwork. Really good. Anyway, with this figure here, it's something about that head sculpt, the eye shape. It looks just like Patrick Gleason's artwork, who was one of the artists who worked on that 19-issue run. He was probably like the lead artist. And he's become one of my favorite Spider-Man artists. Patrick Gleason is awesome. If you haven't checked out his stuff, you should. But this one just really captures the look. And it's really all about the eye shape. Anyway, this is a cool figure. I like it a lot. I'd like to say I've got all the Spider-Man I need. But if they just keep pumping out awesome Spider-Man like this, I'm going to keep buying them. I might as well just, while we're talking about the clone, Ben Reilly. So I'm a Ben Reilly fan. He's a character that's kind of got the short end of the stick because if you don't know the history of the clone, there was a storyline in the 90s. Well, actually, we have to go back, I think, to the 70s where there was a story where Spider-Man got cloned. They fought. It lasted like 3 issues. The clone died, and Peter Parker went on with his life. Anyway, many years later, they did a storyline in the 90s where the clone came back. He apparently did not die. And they did this whole bait and switch where they ran some tests in their blood and they find out that the clone who had been living in exile was the one true Peter Parker, and the Peter Parker we've been reading about all these years was the clone. You know, it was a mistake, but once they realized the error, Peter Parker agreed to let Ben Reilly be Spider-Man, and he moved off to Oregon. And I think that was Marvel actually wanted to go forward with that. Ben Reilly was going to be the new Spider-Man. The logic being that Peter Parker was married now, Mary Jane was pregnant. You know, it just wasn't as fun for people to read about an old married guy. So they wanted to push Peter aside and bring in Ben Reilly. Fans didn't like that, so Marvel had to kind of change course. They killed off Ben, and when he died, he disintegrated just to make it known definitively that he was the clone, and Peter could move on with his life. People hated that clone saga for the most part. Not only was it all over the place, but it lasted forever. I want to say 3 years or something. The comic books were bogged down by it. And not just Amazing Spider-Man, Web of Spider-Man, Spectacular Spider-Man, the adjectiveless Spider-Man. All of them were tied up with this clone saga stuff, and people were just so bored of it. Now, Ben Reilly has come back from the dead a couple of times since, and I don't think they've ever really done right by him. Every time he comes back, they either make him a bad guy or they do something weird with him. So I was happy when they came back with that recent storyline where he was wearing this costume and he got to be Spider-Man, he got to be heroic again. I was happy to see him back as Spider-Man. But at the end of that storyline, he reverted back to being evil and he became a brand new character, and they made a toy of that in the exact same wave, and this is Chasm. So you can see he definitely still looks like a Spider-Man. He looks like an evil Spider-Man. He's got a spider on his chest, on his back. He's got the Spider-Man shaped eyes. He's got the kind of wristbands that Ben Reilly wore in his previous Spider-Man costume. I don't think they've done this storyline very well. Like, as disappointed as I was to see Ben Reilly go back to being a bad guy, I thought this was a potentially interesting thing to do with him. Because Marvel seems to struggle with knowing what to do with Ben Reilly, because they already have so many Spider people. They have Miles Morales. They have Spider-Man 2099. They have Spider-Gwen. So there's just too many Spider-Men kicking around. I get that. They can't all maintain their own comic books. So by making him a bad guy, if they do something interesting with it, and it's not a complete character assassination, like if they make it a reasonable reason why he became a bad guy, I could get behind it. And I really like this costume. I think it was Ed McGuinness, I want to say, that designed the look. Anyway, it's a really cool look, and I really like Ben Reilly. And then for his first kind of storyline, they teased that they were going to tie it into the old 80s Marvel event called Inferno, where all these demons came and invaded Earth. And so now that Ben Reilly was bad, he was bringing all these demons back, so it was like Inferno 2.0. I was really looking forward to it because I love the original Inferno event. The new version was called Dark Web, and I thought it was stupid. Really poorly executed. So I was excited about this character, but they just did not stick the landing. Anyway, this isn't a comic book review channel. This is a toy review channel. I think the toy is excellent. I love the way he looks. I hope this character does eventually get a storyline that he deserves. But otherwise, he's a great looking build, great figure. For accessories, I think he had some extra hands. He's got these kind of weird little translucent, I don't know, energy webs that wrap around his wrists or something. It's he doesn't need much more than that. But yeah, he's pretty cool. I was happy about this figure. And I really like getting figures of characters that are recent in the comic books. Because for me, I was a big Marvel fan as a kid, but there was no toys. Like, it was years before they started making toys with Toy Biz. But nowadays, you know, I don't have to wait 10 years to get a character I want. Sometimes a character appears in a comic book, and then he's out as a toy a couple of months later. That doesn't happen a whole lot, but with characters like the Red Goblin and now with Chasm, it does happen sometimes, and it's pretty cool to have that quick turnover. Another figure from the retro wave was Tarantula. This is a classic Spidey villain. I have lots of Tarantula comic books. I wouldn't say I'm a big Tarantula fan. I don't recall any of those stories being particularly great. One of them that sticks out in my head was one where the tarantula actually transformed into a full-on actual tarantula, and he got gunned down by police and killed. But that obviously wasn't this guy. There have been a couple of different guys that have worn the tarantula costume. So yeah, the guy that had the story that touched me the most was a character that was, showed up and then he died and whatever. But anyway, I like the look of Tarantula. He's a character that seemed long overdue for a toy. I was a little surprised they went with this blue mask. Like, it does give him a little bit of extra color, makes him maybe a little bit more interesting to look at, but it also looks like his costume just doesn't match. Especially given the fact that these retro carded figures are supposed to be throwbacks to the kind of 90s Toy Biz stuff, because I have the 90s Toy Biz Tarantula figure, and he had a black mask, which is how I always remember him from the comic books. So I'm not sure why they went with blue. It looks a little bit odd to me. Really nice head sculpt on this guy. Again, I find the body is not great. It's a leaner body. I don't know. It looks okay, I guess. There's something maybe with the shoulders. He's got... The costume is so plain that, like at least with Spider-Man, he's got all these lines painted on him, so it can kind of distract sometimes from if there's some wonky articulation. But the Tarantula, I find maybe his body is just a little plain, and so there's a little bit of weirdness with the shoulders and stuff, and it stands out a little bit more. I don't know. But cool figure. I like him. Glad I got him. Lastly, from the Spider-Man retro wave is the Rose. Now, this is a character I was really excited about. Now, I don't know. There's probably lots of long-term Spider-Man fans that don't think of the Rose as a key Spider-Man character. But to me, he seems like one. And I think it's just because of the time that I started collecting comic books. It was right around the time that this guy made his first appearance. He is the son of the Kingpin. So the Kingpin is Wilson Fisk. This is Richard Fisk, who was kind of I would say kind of like the meek, disappointing son of the gangster. And so then to show his dad that, he could be just as badass as he went and took on this new persona. And it was a bit of a mystery in the comic books. Who is the Rose? And he had this kind of rival crime family to the Kingpin. And there was a big gang war storyline. And it introduced me to all kinds of characters like Hobgoblin and Jack-O-Lantern. And the Rose was in there with all those guys. It was just a very exciting time for me because I was new to comic books. I was learning about all these new characters. And the Rose, he died. And just recently, he came back. So, good timing, I guess, to get an action figure of the Rose. But this is a guy that I've wanted for a long time. And I actually made a really lazy custom of him a while ago, which I did show to you guys in a video some time ago. Because they made a Deadpool figure in a white suit. I really have no need for a Deadpool in a white suit. So I thought, I have an extra Baron Zemo head with a purple mask. I'm going to put the Baron Zemo head on the Deadpool body. It wasn't perfect. I even had a flower accessory from a Jean Grey figure, and so I put the little flower in his hand. Mind you, it was purple, but it kind of worked. And what else? I had sunglasses that I put on him. I forget where they came from, but yeah. So I had sunglasses, the mask, and everything. It kind of worked, but this is better. I'm glad I can retire my custom, and now that I have an official Rose figure, I think this guy's pretty awesome. I just topped up for a second because I wanted to grab some boxes that I want to show you guys. Now, for some of these other figures, I've mostly been doing kind of split screens to show you the cards they come on. But these boxes here are a little bit nicer and they warrant a little bit of talking about themselves. But anyway, when I went over to grab them, I realized I forgot to talk about an Iron Man. So this guy was part of the Captain Marvel wave as well, I believe. And so this is the Heroes Reborn version of Iron Man. So there was a storyline in the, I want to say early 90s when they killed off the Avengers, essentially, and the Fantastic Four. At least everybody thought they died in the Marvel Universe, but really they got sucked into an alternate universe, and they brought in big guns like Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld over from Image and relaunched those comic books set in an alternative universe. And it was supposed to be a really big, return to form for the Avengers. Now, mind you, this is before the MCU movies and everything had kind of really lifted the Avengers back up into prominence. They were kind of, going to waste over in the comic book world. The X-Men and Spider-Man were getting all the hype, and the Avengers were not the best. So the Heroes Reborn storyline was kind of done to refresh those titles. I don't think it was as successful as they'd hoped. It was short-lived. They brought the Avengers back to the regular Marvel Universe not long afterwards. Rob Liefeld didn't even last the whole run. I think he did the first 6 issues. Anyway, this was a cool look for Iron Man. It's not super distinct. It's gold and red, and it's very similar to a lot of his other armors. But it's different enough that it warranted me buying him again. I will admit I've kind of fallen into the trap with Iron Man that even though Iron Man has never been one of my absolute favorite characters, I always consider him more of my brother Doug's character, because when we were kids, we kind of split the Marvel Universe up. I collected some books, he collected some books. Iron Man was his guy. Now, over the years, I have collected various runs of Iron Man here and there, but I still, in my head, I think of him as Doug's guy, so I don't have that attachment. But he's got so many different armors that sometimes are radically different, but most of the time they're just slightly different. And I've gotten into the habit of buying them, pretty much all of them, because in the comic books, Iron Man has a hall of armor. You kind of saw it in the 3rd Iron Man movie when he called all of his armors remotely and they were all flying around at the end. And so I don't necessarily feel like I'm buying repeats of the same character. When I buy these figures, I kind of feel like I'm buying a new armor to go into the hall of armor. And that's kind of how I justify it in my head to keep spending money on these slightly different Iron Man figures. But anyway, slightly different or not, I think this guy's pretty cool. I like him. Okay, so on to some... Before I show you these ones, I'm going to go into some of these bigger box sets I got. So this here was an exclusive set. Here in Canada, it's exclusive to Toys R Us. I'm not sure where you get it, probably Target down in the States. This was a box set that was kind of frustrating for me because this thing was, I want to say, $90, which is expensive. And I don't necessarily, it's not even like crazy priced given the price of the figures nowadays. This box set comes with 2 figures, Mania and Venom Space Knight. Now, Venom Space Knight is a really big figure. He's the kind of figure that if he was retailing alone, he would be $50. And considering that the regular figures are about $40, $90 is about what you would pay for these 2 figures separately, so it's not, crazy. However, I kind of feel that, when you're paying $40 a figure, once you lump 2 of them together, you should get a discount. Like, they should be $70, not $80 or $90. But Marvel doesn't, or Hasbro doesn't feel the same way, I guess. So, anyway, if you wanted both these characters, you're probably fine with the price that you had to pay for it. Me, I only wanted Mania. The thing is with this Venom Space Knight figure, this was a toy that they had released previously as a Build-A-Figure. So I had to buy 7 other figures in a Spider-Man wave to get his arm and his leg and his head, build them together, and I've got them already. I've had them for years. Now, I'm sure there's people that missed out on that, or maybe didn't want to buy 7 figures to get a Venom Space Knight, so they're probably pretty happy to have an opportunity to just outright buy him. They might be bummed that they have to pay extra to get this Mania character they've never heard of. But for me, the Venom was kind of a waste. So here he is. So he's Venom. He's a big figure. The Space Knight thing was very short-lived. It's when he was kind of a cosmic hero for a little while. He went and joined the Guardians of the Galaxy. He became a Space Knight like Rom. And, yeah, I don't know. It was kind of weird. Anyway, at least they threw me a bit of a bone with this figure in that they gave him a new head. So he has 2 heads. He has one head, which is exactly the same as the one I have from the Build-A-Figure wave. But then they also gave me this head, which has got a bunch of teeth, which is kind of looks like maybe the evil, scary bit of Venom is sneaking out. So by displaying him with this head on my shelf, he looks different from the one I have before. But still, I would have rather not have to waste $50 to get this guy again. He also has some snap-on accessories. So he's got like a big claw on his arms. I can't remember if the Build-A-Figure had those. I don't think so. So that's also a new add-on. So my previous Venom, I don't have any things on his arm. Again, he might not have even come with them, but if he did, I didn't display him with them. This one here I will, so he looks different enough. And it is a nice figure, so, it is cool for the people that missed out on him to be able to get him again. And I can understand Hasbro wanted to, reuse this mold because it's pretty unique. So good for them. But yeah, I really wish they just packaged it alone for $50 to give those people a chance. Putting it with Mania was kind of a bummer. So here is Mania. She is another symbiote character. She's basically a skinny little punk rock girl Venom. And by punk rock, she's got like spiky wrist bracelets like Avril Lavigne would wear. She's got a spiky belt. And she's also got like some spiky boots. And then she's also got a little bit like of spiky hair poking out. So this was a character that appeared in the, not the Space Knight Venom era, but there was a time when Flash Thompson became Venom instead of Eddie Brock. And he had a different look. He was known as Agent Venom. And he didn't have the teeth. He had more of a military look. And he was, when not being Agent Venom, he was a gym teacher at Midtown High, I believe. And one of his students was Andy Benton. And at one point, some of his Venom symbiote got onto Andy and she became Mania. And so she was kind of an apprentice, so to speak, of Flash Thompson. She kind of followed him around. He was showing her the ropes a little bit. And then she kind of fell by the wayside when that Agent Venom comic ended, because then Eddie Brock became Venom again and his whole storyline took off. Andy has come back around. She is now currently a new character. I believe she is named Silence, which is still a symbiote character, but now she's more of like a white and pink symbiote. Anyway, I don't really care for that look as much. We'll probably get an action figure of Silence in the near future. But anyway, I'm kind of glad they gave us Mania, because she was a short-lived character. They could have forgotten about her and they could have just moved on and gotten Silence. And I really liked Andy Benton as a character. So I would have bought the Silence figure and said, okay, well, at least I've got Andy, but I would have rathered the Mania figure. So here we go. We got her. So thank you, Hasbro, for making her. She's nothing particularly special, but she's a character that I like. And it's a character that you didn't know if she would ever get a toy, because I think she was from a series that, wasn't a huge series. And like I said, it was short-lived. But anyway, I'm really glad we got her. So very cool. Another box that I got just recently. These are the most recent figures I got out of this whole video I'm doing. This is the second Squadron Supreme box set. So I previously got one with Hyperion and Dr. Spectrum. So the Squadron Supreme are kind of Marvel's version of the Justice League. So Hyperion is their Superman. Dr. Spectrum is their Green Lantern. This set here has Nighthawk and Blur. He used to be known as the Whizzer. I'm not sure why they changed the name, other than maybe Whizzer is associated with pissing. So now he's Blur. Anyway, so Nighthawk and Blur, this is basically Flash and the Batman, if you haven't figured that out. And so yeah, we got these two guys now. It's a cool set. The only kind of major character we're missing from the Squadron Supreme now is Power Princess, but they've already announced that they're making her as a single-carded figure later, so that when they release her, I'll have the whole kind of core team of 5, and that'll be pretty cool. So yeah, I'm happy they got these guys out. So here is Nighthawk. And yeah, he looks great. He's got this cool cape that can be removable. His helmet, even though he's kind of supposed to be Batman, his helmet is much more like Hawkman, where he's got these kind of gold wings coming up off of his eyes. It's a cool figure. Now the thing is, we've had a Nighthawk figure previously, but it was a different version of Nighthawk. So the thing with the Squadron Supreme, and I'm not going to pretend to be an expert, they had some of their biggest, best storylines before my time, like the early 80s. But every time they show up, it seems to be like a different incarnation. Like they come from an alternate universe, and they don't necessarily acknowledge what happened the last time they showed up. And with the most recent appearance of these guys, which was in Jason Aaron's Avengers run just a couple of years ago, these were all new versions of the characters. This wasn't the Hyperion or the Nighthawk that we knew from before. So with Nighthawk, they actually changed his race. He used to be a white guy in all the prior incarnations. This time he's a black guy. I don't remember what his alter ego was, but it was he had a different name, a different backstory than the previous Nighthawk. So we have an action figure that came out a couple years ago of the white Nighthawk. Now we've got the black one. Totally works for me because they are different characters. Even though they're both Nighthawk, they're kind of from different dimensions, multiverses, all that sort of stuff. And I thought Jason Aaron's Avengers run was pretty mid. Even though I really like Jason Aaron, and I really like Ed McGuinness, who did a lot of the artwork for that series. I thought his artwork on these guys was really great. I don't think Nighthawk and Hyperion have ever looked better than when drawn by Ed McGuinness. But the storyline just didn't really grab me. Although, of all the Squadron Supreme, I think Nighthawk was the most interesting. And so yeah, I'm glad we got a figure of him. He's pretty cool. And then Blur, or the Wizard. His costume is pretty basic, but I like it. The black and the yellow look good together. Those red goggles and the little lightning bolts coming off. It works. I dig it. It's Flash-esque and yet not blatantly Flash. But this guy, again, his background's a little blurry because there have been different versions of him. But I believe the original version, or at least one version of him, he gave up the identity of Wizard and became Speed Demon, which is a kind of a reoccurring Spider-Man villain. So we already have a figure of Speed Demon. Again, it kind of works to have them both in my collection because this is a different version. He has a different alter ego and all that sort of stuff. So, yeah, anyway, pretty cool. Again, not a giant Squadron Supreme fan, but these are new characters. I don't have any versions of Wizard in my collection, unless you count the Speed Demon. So, yeah, pretty stoked about these guys. They look nice. Lastly, okay, I've got just a couple of animated Spider-Man figures. Now, I know I already talked about some retro-carded Spider-Man. This is another retro-carded Spider-Man figure. This guy came in a blister card. It is based on the 90s animation. The toy is based on the 90s Toy Biz toy. And this is Kraven the Hunter. I wasn't sure if I was going to buy this toy. I'm glad I did, but I do have some problems with it. So, I really like Kraven. And the first story I ever read with Kraven, now mind you, when I was a little kid, I watched some of the Spider-Man cartoons, and I was familiar with Kraven from some cartoons and, from probably coloring books and whatever else. I had a basic understanding about Kraven the Hunter. But when I started reading comic books in like the mid to late 80s, it was like 1986, the first Kraven story I ever encountered was called Kraven's Last Hunt. And it is, by many, considered one of the best Spider-Man stories ever. And it was really dark. Like, tonally, it's pretty different than your average Spider-Man stuff. Kraven the Hunter, who had failed to capture Spider-Man many times, he was going insane. He'd kind of had enough. He captured Spider-Man. He wasn't making any jokes or anything. He wasn't being corny. He just shot him, caught him in a web, shot him with a rifle. And you were like, oh my God, did he just kill Spider-Man? He buries Spider-Man 6 feet under. Then he takes on the mantle of Spider-Man. He wears the Spider-Man black costume. He ends up trying to prove, I think, that he's better than the original Spider-Man ever was. So he's going nuts. He's wearing Spider-Man's costume. He goes into the sewers. He fights Vermin, a cannibalistic rat creature. Anyway, it was a pretty crazy storyline. It turns out he didn't actually kill Peter Parker, although I think we were left to guess that for like 2 or 3 issues before we knew the truth. What he did is he shot him with a drug that put him asleep for like 2 weeks, essentially, and he wanted Peter Parker to wake up, crawl out of his grave, which he did, because Kraven wanted to gloat to him that I could have killed you if I wanted to. That makes me the ultimate hunter. I have accomplished the goal I've always wanted to do all these years. Then he put a rifle in his mouth and blew his head off. So that was the end of Kraven. That was the 6-issue storyline, Kraven's Last Hunt. And I was 8 years old when I read it, and I was like, holy fuck, like this is an intense storyline. And it kind of locked Kraven in my mind as one of Spider-Man's most dangerous and intense villains. Now, they've brought Kraven back in the comic books a few times, and I don't like how they do it. First, they gave him a son, then they gave him another son, then they gave him a daughter and a wife, and they're all calling themselves Kraven. They all basically act and dress like Kraven. And then all of his kids got together, and they had a ritual, and they raised the original Kraven back from the dead. And then Kraven cloned himself, and then the clone killed the original. Anyway, it's a mess. But anyway, I like Kraven, and first, before I collected 6-inch Marvel Legends, I was collecting the 3 3/4-inch Marvel Universe figures, and I was a big fan of them. They weren't all great. Like, some of them were a little too spindly, and especially the skinny guys like Spider-Man and stuff, the proportions were off. But one of the very best figures of the Marvel Universe line was Kraven the Hunter. I thought he looked awesome. It was kind of a contemporary look, but he had this really intense look on his face that seemed like the character I read about in Kraven's Last Hunt. Very cool. And then that line fizzled out, and the 6-inch line really ramped up, and so I made the switch over to the 6-inch line. And then they announced that they were going to do a Kraven figure, and I was like, oh man, I hope the 6-inch Kraven figure is as good as the 3 3/4-inch one. They put out the Kraven, and it was definitely based on the 3 3/4-inch one. It was the same costume, the same look. And yet it lacked the intensity in the eyes. It looked kind of like a hipster bored Kraven. He's got like kind of a cheesy like Tony Stark facial hair, and like it's a cool costume. It's not a classic costume necessarily. It's not that far removed from the classic costume, but it's just something is lacking in the face. So I like that figure, but I thought they could have done better. And then a couple of years ago, they did a 2-pack based on the Kraven's Last Hunt storyline. I think it said Kraven's Last Hunt on the bottom. And it had Black Suit Spider-Man, and then it had a Kraven figure. But the Kraven, he had this head sculpt, which looks like he's constipated or something. It's a really wildly animated face with a huge sneer. Like, he looks like the villain from the Strawberry Shortcake, the Purple Pie Man or something. That's what he reminds me of. It's ridiculous. And he also had these little slippers on, which is true to the comic books, but it didn't look good in action figure form. So the little slippers, the big sneer on his face, I was like, I'm not going to buy that pack. So I didn't. Anyway, when they announced they were doing Kraven on a single card for the retro line, I thought, oh, they're just taking that Kraven's Last Hunt Kraven and repackaging him on a card. Not interested. But when I saw him in the store, I realized, yes, they did keep the goofy head with the wild sneer. They actually did change up his body. And the body is based on the 90s animated look, and it is based on the 90s Toy Biz cartoon figure that I have. And I really like this look with the boots, with the kind of buccaneer boots with the white zebra stripe trim and the yellow lion's mane vest and everything. Anyway, it's really cool. So this figure is really great from the neck down. The head leaves a little bit to be desired. I would say I could just swap out the original Kraven head on here, but like I said, the original Kraven head looks a little too meh. So I still think we need a good Kraven head. But this one is growing on me over time. Like he looks nuts. And Kraven was definitely nuts. So yeah, it's okay. Anyway, the last couple of sets I want to talk about. So Hasbro has been putting out some of these sets that are exclusive to their website. They initially did it with X-Men figures, and they were based on the 90s X-Men cartoon. So if you're an old guy like me, you might remember those cartoons in the 90s. You could go rent them at Blockbuster. They would put out the episodes on VHS, maybe like 3 episodes lumped together. And so a lot of people bought those VHS collections. Anyway, so they started putting out X-Men figures based on the cartoon, so they had cell shading and all that stuff in these boxes that looked like VHS tapes, which is pretty fun. So now they've done the same with Spider-Man. They've put out a couple of them already. They did one with Black Suit Spider-Man and Carnage, which I didn't buy because I already have a Black Suit Spider-Man and Carnage that I'm quite happy with. And then they did Dr. Octopus and Mary Jane, or Dr. Octopus and Aunt May, which the Dr. Octopus looks incredible, but I don't really need an Aunt May figure. I will probably buy that figure eventually, but I haven't yet. Then they put out this one, the Green Goblin and Mary Jane. Now, Mary Jane is a character I didn't necessarily need in my collection. Before I get into the figures, I'll just show you the box set so you can see how it looks like VHS tapes on the side. And I don't know, if you're a young kid watching this, you might not even know what a VHS tape looks like, but that's exactly what they look like. You know, they got the little bind. It even kind of looks like the VHS logo, but it just says MVL. So yeah, really cool. So these boxes are really fun. I'm tempted to keep this. If I had extra shelf space, I could put it up there so it would look like I have VHSs. But I don't have room. Just today, I had to throw out some of my Super 7 Ultimate boxes that are they're beautiful boxes. It's hard to let go of them, but I just don't have the space in here I don't have the room to display all my toys, let alone worry about displaying boxes. So yeah, these are probably going to have to go in the garbage, but they're really nice. I do appreciate them. Anyway, I was thinking I didn't really need a Mary Jane. And I don't really need a Green Goblin either, but Green Goblin is like one of my all-time favorite characters, and I don't think they've quite nailed him yet. So I was kind of hoping that this one might be the Green Goblin I was looking for. Because the Green Goblin, like I said, is one of my all-time favorite characters. A while back, like very early on this channel, I did an episode with my dearly departed friend Andrew, where we talked about the 10 best action figures in our collections. And one of my top 10 action figures in my entire collection, and this is, even though I've got all kinds of really nice detailed figures from the last 10, 15 years, I went with my 90s Toy Biz Green Goblin as one of my best action figures, because even though it might not have the modern articulation and the size was 5 inches, which isn't like my ideal scale and everything, I just thought it captured the look of Green Goblin so well. I loved it. And the Green Goblins that they've made in the Marvel Legends line just have not been as good. The first one I thought was straight up bad. He had this dark green and dark purple. The hat wasn't right. I didn't like the look on his face. So then when they did a Green Goblin on the retro card, I thought finally they're going to get it right. I still don't think the head looks right. It's grown on me over time, but I was initially quite disappointed with it. That it's kind of a shame that I'm still chasing that 90s Toy Biz figure. So the fact that this Green Goblin is based on the 90s cartoon, based on that 90s Toy Biz figure, I thought maybe they'll finally give me a bigger, blown up, more detailed version of that toy I love. And this is a good Green Goblin figure, but it is not as good as the 90s Toy Biz one, which is disappointing. I'm glad this one is different from my other two Marvel Legends Green Goblins. I feel I can display all three of these next to each other, and it doesn't feel like somebody's going to look at them and say, are those all the same figure? No, they're all different. This guy's got an entirely new head. He does look more animated than the previous versions. He lacks the kind of chainmail design because he's supposed to be a little sleeker animated look, so he's got just smooth arms and legs. It's a good figure. I like it. He comes with the back glider. He comes with a pumpkin bomb. He comes with his little satchel. It's good. It's just, man, I wish they could redo that 90s Toy Biz figure that I love so much. I've got all kinds of Green Goblin figures over the years. I have them in all kinds of weird formats. I have a Green Goblin figure from 1978, the same year I was born. And it's an awesome figure. It's been busted up. It's now in pieces, but it was a big 12-inch figure. And I think it's probably one of the earliest toys I ever remember owning, which is maybe why this guy is one of my all-time favorite characters. It's just ingrained in me. And that figure had what I would consider a perfect Green Goblin look. I feel that 90s figure captured the look of that 1978 figure, and nothing that they've put out since has quite lived up to it. So, good figure. Happy I got him. Still not the best Green Goblin figure I have. Then he came with Mary Jane. So here's Mary Jane. And she's nice. The outfit is clearly, it's based on the animated show, so it immediately looks dated. Considering that Mary Jane is supposed to be a hot fashion model chick, you'd think maybe they would have made her a more contemporary outfit, but she's wearing these cowboy boots over top of these purple jeans with a yellow sweater and a pink turtleneck. It's not a cool look. But I think it's probably what she wore in the animated series. So, I look at it, it's reminiscent of that 90s cartoon, which I did quite enjoy. And I have a Mary Jane figure in my collection, but this one does work for me because the thing is, when I bought the Gwen Stacy action figure a couple years ago, it came with two heads. It came with a Gwen Stacy and a Mary Jane. And I had to choose which character I wanted to put on that body. Now, to me, Mary Jane is the more important character. And I thought if I can only have one of them in my collection, I want Mary Jane. But the outfit was clearly intended to be Gwen. It has Gwen's kind of iconic knee-high boots and the skirt and everything. So I thought, this body belongs to Gwen, so I displayed it as Gwen. But then I bought a Moira McTaggart figure, who is kind of an X-Men character, but she's a civilian. So she had a skirt and just a sweater. And I thought, I don't really care about Moira McTaggart that much. I'm going to take her head off, put the extra Mary Jane head on Moira, and now I've got a Mary Jane figure. So in my collection currently, I have Mary Jane and Gwen Stacy, but I don't have Moira McTaggart. So now that I have this Mary Jane, even though I don't think it looks as good as the other one because it's kind of goofy animated, I'm going to put her on my shelf like this, and I'm going to actually revert my Moira back into a Moira figure. So by getting Mary Jane here, it does kind of give me a new character back on my shelf because now I have Moira represented. So yeah, it's a good figure. It's a nice face sculpt. The colors really pop. I like it. So there's Mary Jane. Okay, last set of figures. This has gone on a long time, I know. But I told you I had a lot of figures. This is another one of the VHS sets. This is Peter Parker and Alistair Smythe, the Spider Slayer. So again, really cool DVD box set. I was really excited to get this Alistair Smythe figure. First, I'll talk about the Peter Parker. This is a really nice Peter. This is kind of Peter how I picture him. I don't like teenage Peter Parker. Like, he's fine, but I didn't grow up with teenage Peter Parker. I started reading comic books in '86. Spider-Man was already a grown man. He was finished with university. He was proposing to Mary Jane, and very shortly after I started reading comic books, he was married to her. So, he was a grown-up. And I like that this look captures grown-up Peter Parker. The Peter Parker that they made a couple of years ago on the retro card, it was him with his big, kind of Coke bottle glasses like he was a teenager. And that's just not the look I associate with my Peter. So, yeah, I like this one better. Even though he's got that animated look, which looks a little out of place sometimes with some of my other figures, it looks good. And I'm glad I got this Peter. He comes with a little camera, which is perfect. It might have been nice if it had a strap that you could put it around his neck, because I believe the 90s Toy Biz figure came with a strap around his neck. But anyway, minor complaint, it's a good figure. Alistair Smythe. So this guy is goofy, and yet I wanted him. I wanted this figure bad. I was glad that they made it. So this guy, if you're not familiar with Alistair Smythe, there was a character very early on in the Amazing Spider-Man comic books, back when Stan Lee was still writing it, called Spencer Smythe. And he was creating these robots called Spider Slayers. Every time he showed up in the comic books, he'd have a new type of Spider Slayer. It was usually J. Jonah Jameson hiring him to try and create a Spider Slayer to kill Spider-Man. Spencer Smythe eventually died, but then his son, Alistair, he showed up. He wanted to continue his father's legacy of creating Spider Slayers and finally defeating Spider-Man. At some point, he got crippled, and he was in a wheelchair, so there was a couple of appearances when Alistair showed up, and he was in this kind of Professor X-looking wheelchair, and then eventually he experimented on himself and turned himself into what he called the Ultimate Spider Slayer. And it was a pretty goofy look. He had it in the comic books. I think he only ever appeared that way once in the comic books, but that was the look they went with for the 90s animated series. And so because of that, it's kind of been immortalized, and now this is, I guess, his look. So he is a shirtless guy with a flat top mullet. He's got these big hooks growing directly out of his shoulders. And then he's got 2 claw toes. And then he's got fishy fins growing out of his arms and his legs. And I don't understand what the deal is, why he went with all that. And what's weird is I don't even really remember him from the cartoon with this look. I remember the look from the comic book, which was a little bit creepier looking. It was a little bit less human. And the toy that I have of this guy from the 90s, it looks like the comic book look. So I kind of, in my mind, assumed that he looked the same in the cartoon as well. Like, really gaunt and gangly and creepy. But then when I saw this figure come out, I'm like, oh, this guy he just looks like a hockey player in the changing room or something. Like, he looks much more human in the face. I was like, is that how he looked in the cartoon? And sure enough, when I went back and looked at screenshots, that's how he looked in the cartoon. So I guess cool. I might have preferred them to do this toy to look like the 90s toy / comic book rather than the 90s cartoon. But I get it. They're going for the cartoon. So I still really like this guy. I like it more than I should. It's a stupid looking character, but he's stupid in that awesome kind of way. So really cool. I like him. Anyway, that's it. That's a whole lot of Marvel Legends. And now I'm going to have to spend a whole bunch of time shooting B-roll so I can do split screen with all these guys. Because with this current setup that I'm trying, I just got a new light fixture in here. I'm sitting a little farther from the camera than I normally do. So anyway, I'm still getting used to it. And I know when I hold these figures up, especially characters like the Rose, he's just like a white blobby blur. You can't really see any details. That's why I'm going to shoot some close-ups of all this stuff. But that's going to take me some time. So, yeah, maybe I'll get to that now. Oh, and look, Casey's waking up just in time to say goodbye. Here, Casey. You want to say goodbye to everybody? No? Anyway, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please make sure to hit like and subscribe. Leave me comments below. And then stay tuned because me and Casey and Chad, we'll all be back with another episode very soon. So I'll see you then.